Hello and welcome. My name is Joe Valenti. I'm one of the co-founders here at BrokerBinder. Today's discussion is a reflection on the broader context of the software industry in 2017 and going forward. The presentation will have a lot to do with the way software is impacting the business of mortgage brokerage in Canada in 2017 and going forward, but you'll see that it's put in context with a larger market, what's happening, bigger trends, how software is changing from the way it used to be, and how mortgage brokers might want to respond to those changes as software does progress in a very real sense. You'll see that today's presentation is divided into four sections, and of course we'll begin at the beginning. You'll see that the backgrounds change as the sections change, so it'll help you to sort of keep moving along. In this first section, we're going to talk about the unfolding drama that is mortgage brokerage technology, starting from the 1990s up till today. Back in the 90s, the only way for brokers such as they were, there weren't very many. The market was smaller, even more fully dominated by the banks than it is today. The only real methods that existed to share information or to get to attract new customers really was through such media as radio and community newspapers and that sort of thing. And of course, hard work by phone and networking. Those things absolutely worked. By 2001, even late 1990s, broadly speaking, the internet happened, and many things happened when the internet happened. Disintermediation of every kind, but also a great deal of progress. And while people look back at the D&H acquisition of Filogix as being an important but perhaps difficult moment, in truth, that acquisition really helped the mortgage brokerage business mature in many important ways. And frankly, it's reflected in the way the market has evolved in recent years. There now was a standard. There now was a data schema, as in the language that we use, that everyone was adhering to. It made it, and that centralization really did bring a lot of value, not only to D&H, but to the industry in general, and frankly provided opportunities for the mortgage brokerage industry to grow in ways that it hadn't been able to in the past, fragmented as it was. Now, that having been said, while some people might not agree with me, it is fair to say that the general market grew as a result, but it also comes, like so many things, at a price, or as a consequence. There was a great deal more centralization and thus concentration of market power that was the result of these changes. And that too is reflected in the modern industry in 2017 for sure. Now, here, for the purposes of illustration, quite literally, is a photograph of my mom's hi-fi player from the 1970s, 1980s. And some of you will laugh perhaps to see that this piece of furniture is going to help me make a point, but it really will. And the point really has to do with this notion that one size can possibly fit all. Now, when these kinds of hi-fi units came out in the 70s and 80s, they really were all the rage. Your mom probably had one just like mine did. And it was really quite novel. In a single spot, you had a turntable, a radio, a pair of speakers, all in an attractive piece of ebony furniture. It was great, and it was certainly very popular. I'm sure many of you recognize it. The analogy I'm making here is that through the 2000s up till 2010, even largely until today, the notion that one size fits all, isn't it great? Everything you need is in one box to be able to run your mortgage business. And these so-called super applications really were the rage. They were very popular, and indeed they still are, and they serve a function. It's not to suggest that having everything in one box is a bad thing. And if everything was one box and really worked and consistently worked and was evolving and changing with the times, that would be great too. They certainly created value, and they certainly moved the pendulum of market power away from the center, which was, arguably a good thing too. They provided a mechanism by which some of the banners were able to differentiate themselves by providing better modules, better support, better communication to clients through email and some other capabilities. So there was certainly a time and place for these so-called super apps to exist, but they also come at a price, like everything else that I'm going to discuss in the presentation. So In this little graphic, you're looking at, I guess, the later 1980s, 1990s response to the idea that, okay, yeah, we don't want everything to be in one cabinet anymore. What if you wanted to change your speakers, if you wanted a better turntable, if you wanted to have an 8-track player or something else? Um, the idea of that monolithic piece of furniture was no longer terribly attractive. And so this idea of modular components came out. And for obvious reasons, that was pretty popular. You could mix and match, do things that you wanted to do. Well, except that you couldn't really mix and match because if you had a Sony system, it would only be compatible with Sony products. And the same thing with Panasonic or other brands that you might recognize from that era. So, okay, you could experiment and do things, but you might also recall you pretty much needed a PhD to make any of these things work. The smart kid on your block would come and connect it for you and all your neighbors and everybody else in your family. It was not always so very easy. And again, in the software world, when this kind of thing came up, it really was an opportunity for there to be what we refer to as vendor capture. Once you invest in a certain block of software, you really have not much choice. You really have to keep investing in that same platform. There's really very little you can do about it. Having sunk so many dollars into it, the incremental costs seem modest, and yet you were always captured in a very real sense by these vendors and committed to using their products. Can be difficult. And again, you needed an expert to make things happen, which made it expensive. Something important happened in the later 2000s, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and it's reflected in this graphic here. This idea that previously you very likely had a server, a black box that a smart guy, a technical person would come and maintain. And although the software licenses you actually ran on those boxes were relatively inexpensive, the infrastructure you needed to make the whole system work was relatively expensive, and that's what you see sort of below the line in the iceberg. There are hardware costs, personnel costs, maintenance costs, training, all kinds of customization and implementation, not to mention issues related to downtime and upgrades and maintenance. When you wanted to change something, it was very often ripping the whole thing out and putting it back in again. Surgery, it's expensive, it's hard, it was very resource intensive. What happened that's very different after 2010, 2012, 2014 is this idea of cloud computing. And it's now so pervasive that we almost think of it as obvious, but it certainly wasn't for a time. And in many companies, it still isn't. You've still got many servers doing email and other things in your companies, these little black boxes that you've been told not to touch. And yet there are so many better ways and cheaper ways of doing these things. Today, the cost of software is arguably higher as a percentage of the overall cost, but the overall cost is itself much lower, and that's reflected in that graphic on the right. So in that context, let's take a look at the idea of moving away from that monolithic mom's stereo, and again, even further away from those modules we talked about before from Panasonic and Sony. This is what we're talking about, right? This idea that we can use, for example, Bluetooth or USB cables or something ubiquitous to be able to mix and match to get things to just work the way we want them to, and talk about this idea that, yep, there's an app for that. Whatever it is you want to do, put it on a screen, put it on a set of headphones, put it on these speakers or that speakers. They can be blue, yellow, or purple. There's a way to get that done today. And that analogy is very much at the heart of what I'm going to be talking about today when I talk next about the second section, integration. This is the idea in software today that we are no longer beholden to that one vendor, to that lock-in, or even to that one piece of furniture. We really can mix and match and use the quote-unquote Bluetooth or USB analogy much more widely than you would have expected. In 2017, email is still the thing to do to manage correspondence and do things. That's fine. When you think about email in particular, and I'm going to dwell on this for a second, email is a great tool, but we all use it in ways that it really wasn't intended to do. Can you obtain documents from your clients with using email? Of course you can. They come in as PDFs. Should you? Yeah, maybe arguably not, because email, as you'll all agree, is not a fantastic way to obtain and store and organize documents. I bet many of you recognize the problem of trying to find stuff in your inbox. Very difficult. And I'm sure you'd also recognize that many people in the industry, sometimes even including me, are guilty of prioritizing our day by looking at the top of our email box and thinking somehow that's the most important thing to do. It's honestly seldom true. The thing that's most important to do right now is, in your case, as mortgage brokers, Typically, the deal that came in, say, 14 days ago, the closing date's very soon. The client's anxious to get their final confirmations. What you ought to be doing right now is helping that deal get closed. Wouldn't it be better if there was an alternative to managing your documents and managing your tasks to email? And part of what this is about is just getting out of that mountain of email. There's the graphic that I had to put in my presentation because you really recognize it. All of the industry is just drowning in email still, despite all the tools that are out there. Now, talk about email. I'm throwing up the banner here for Constant Contact, and Constant Contact's a great brand. I've been a customer of theirs, and you can continue to use it. It's continued to evolve. It's a great product that is used, generally speaking, for mass market, newsletters, mailers, that sort of thing. It's a good product, and it's evolved. But something important I'm going to show you in these slides here is that you kind of do evolve or maybe lose some share. And in the case of Constant Contact, that's reflected in this chart, where around 2012, this upstart called MailChimp came and became superseded them in a certain sense as a predominant brand in that space. And why was that? Well, you could argue that maybe the product overall was better or that the colors were prettier. But the real reason, as far as I'm concerned, has to do with integrations. It's this idea, again, of Bluetooth and USB and getting stuff to work together. MailChimp had understood sooner than even many other people in the industry back in 2010, 2011, 2012, that the key was to make their email program connect with just about everything else you could imagine. In their case, if you go looking, you'll find on their website there are no fewer than 150 different CRMs. And now I'm just talking about CRMs, I'm not talking about all kinds of other things, financial accounting products and ERP products and all kinds of other products, just CRMs. Some of those names you recognize right here, Salesforce and Zoho and Pipedrive and some others. MailChimp connects to not fewer than 150 such programs out of the box. That's something that other brands couldn't say at the beginning, and frankly, it was very expensive for them to spend a lot of time and money making their MailChimp software work with everybody else. But having done it, it was the obvious choice because no matter what you were using, you were then invited to use the same interface and make things work very easily, very seamlessly. So, wow, the value proposition proposed by MailChimp was now more than just the pretty colors and the nice emails. It was also about my application works with yours, whatever yours is. Well, now that's a very compelling thing. Now we really are getting closer to that idea of Bluetooth and USB and away from your mom's stereo set. Taking this analogy a little bit further, we happen not to use Bluetooth. I use MailChimp. We happen to use a different product that in this case is produced by a company called Drip or getdrip.com. It does more than merely send emails. It provides a mechanism for our company to be able to pay attention to who's opening emails and when they open it, if they open it, do they click on something? And if they click on something, what did they click on and with what frequency? When they clicked on something, did they then go on and do something else? Like in our case, for example, start a free trial on BrokerBinder, which, by the way, you can do anytime. So these kinds of diagrams you'll see where you're not merely sending an email over the fence and hoping that somebody's going to read it. On the contrary, using modern technology and not the least bit intrusive to the customer or anything else, you're being able to determine with what frequency your message is getting across, in what way, to what audiences, and thereby quite naturally increasing your productivity. Can you get the right message to the right person at the right time to help them understand the value that you're bringing to your customer? In your case, you're trying to differentiate your services, your expertise, your inside knowledge, your capabilities as a mortgage broker. You really want to get that message across. What messaging works best? And here are tools that allow you to not only do a broadcast, but really so very much more. And this is the way this is going on. So I'm going to take a pause here and just tell you that with tools like this, and this might sound quite shocking, but I mean it quite seriously. If you've got, whether it's 100 or 10,000 emails on a list, what if I told you that I could get your, the 10%, the 20% of your mailing list that are going to need a mortgage this week, this year, this month? What if I could get those people to literally stand up and wave their hands at you and say, hey, call me, I need a mortgage? Well, in truth, with these kinds of tools, that's exactly possible. Because think about it for a second, if you're sending a newsletter, sending other information, birthday cards, whatever it is that you're sending them, And with some regularity, they're opening your emails, they're reading them, they're clicking on them, they're coming to your website, maybe they're looking for rates and all that kind of stuff. If you can observe the 10, 12, 15% of people that are actually doing that consistently, wouldn't you think in your mind that those are probably the people that are in the mortgage market either now or soon because they're reading through your stuff? If I had a 5-year term and it's not due for another 4 years or 3 years, whatever, and I'm kind of not reading your stuff, well, that's fine. It's not that you're spamming or anything else. They just happen not to be interested right now. They're maybe not clicking through right now, but when they need you, they will be. And they really are, in a very literal sense, standing up, waving their hands wildly at you and saying, call me. Wouldn't that be great if you had a tool that did this kind of thing? And the answer is, yeah, these things are out here. They're out here right now. And I'd be willing to bet that that all-in-one monolithic stereo that you've got, that you're running your business with right now, that might maybe came from one of your banners, it may not be doing this capability. It may not be doing some other things. And this is just an example of what I'm going to be talking about, this idea of being able to mix and match, get the best of breed software that you need to run your business in the best way. Not that it's complicated, not that it's difficult, but you just understood this idea that I communicated to you. If you got clients that you can see are coming to your website, you know you should be calling them. So it's not rocket science. It's really very easy. There is some technical skill maybe in getting it set up, but honestly, after that, it's not such a big deal. There are other products as well. For example, I'm highlighting this one here, where not only can you send an email, but it will pay attention whether or not you actually reply. So if you don't reply, I'll send you another one, because how often does it happen that you don't end up replying to somebody's first email for whatever reason? That can happen. And so this kind of tool will continue sending follow-up emails until either it gets to the end of a sequence or the client responds, in which case it stops. All those kinds of things are possible, and you can organize all these things through your CRM or through products like BrokerBinder. So here's this idea now that we're getting away from the monolithic piece of furniture, even getting away from this idea of the modularized but hard to manage components that are out there, and getting into a world where you really do have a great deal more variety. I'm looking at in this graphic, I really am trying to communicate rather deliberately, hey, this stuff can be hard. It's complicated. There's lots of moving parts that you have to put together in order to get a coherent solution. You might need some help. You might need some advice on how to get there, because all the items that were in that chart, you're likely going to be needing at some point. So wouldn't it be great if you could go and find the capabilities that you need and more or less just plug them in as you need them in order to grow your business? Well, that's what this is about. And having made that simple expression, watch me now confuse you and complicate things a little bit when I point out that, while look at this chart, this is from March of 2016, so over a year from when I'm recording this presentation. The group, the category of marketing technology software products that are hosted, to which you could connect things like MailChimp or BrokerBinder or everything else. There are something like 1,400 logos on this chart, 1,400 products that are out there, very narrowly talking about marketing technology. So as you can see here, commerce and sales, management, content, advertising, all stuff that would be quite directly related to your business. These are all tools that you might possibly have an interest in looking at. It's monumental. It's dizzying. There's so much stuff out there, and yet it's also fair to say that there are tools out there that are absolutely going to be valuable for your business and can help you grow. So this idea that that you can have this one super application, or even have the so-called priesthood, these so-called experts coming along and getting you committed to their software stack, and you're captured to them. Wouldn't it be better if, like on the right here, you just get the speakers you want, the phone you want, the audio setup that you want, and be able to run that whole thing? The key here is this acronym you're seeing right here in the middle of the screen called an API. That's an application programming interface, and that really is the heart of allowing software components to talk to one another so that they really can be simple. It's very unlikely, in my humble opinion, that any banner, any agency, or even any individual broker should, in 2017 or going forward, be willing to accept tools from anybody that doesn't include an API, that doesn't include the capability to interoperate nicely with other software, whether it's for email marketing or document management or task management or financial accounting or reporting or security or lead scoring or commissioning, websites, all the things you see on the left there. It's necessary today when you're making choices about your software and indeed about the way you're going to work and the way you're going to make money and the way you're going to differentiate yourself is going to be very much about making it simple, because it really can be very complicated. But if you do it one step at a time and do those things that incrementally add value to your business, it's an entirely manageable process. That's for sure. So no single app without an API should ever again find its way into your business. That for me is a given. Okay, so on to this next last point, and it's very important, data ownership. Um, if you give some thought to that monolithic piece of stereo equipment, or you give thought to even the modular software that was in place, akin to Panasonic and Sony, you were really locked into a single vendor, and you really have to ask yourself, if you ever wanted to make some changes, who owns that data? How easily can you get it? And indeed, from a legal standpoint, where does ownership lie? This is an extremely important point. It's ever more important in the modern world, as you often are aware, and this is a whole other topic, but I'll just touch on it to say all the apps that we all use for free, if you're using Google Maps, if you're using just about anything for free, you can be sure that the price you're paying is in sharing your data. In a very real sense, each of us, become the product. Generally speaking, if you're not paying a few dollars and you're not thereby acquiring for yourself ownership of your own data, then it belongs to somebody else. And you really want to be asking yourself consistently, not only with respect to your mortgage brokerage business, but really just about everything, who owns the data, how do you access it, how do you back it up? And specifically for you, data ownership is really terribly important. It happens, and this is definitely a plug. BrokerBinder is a product that allows you to own your data, make it perfectly portable and mobile, so you really can do with it what you will going forward. And that's a claim that lots of software vendors cannot make, so keep that one in mind. Remember that the owner of an account is generally the one who owns the data in that account. Okay, so for that reason, of course, I'm saying work with an independent vendor, such as BrokerBinder. All right, so coming up to the end here, we talk about transaction management and the way that we work with our applications. Today, you probably have a CRM. It's probably separate from your email, but maybe they're connected in some way, and that'd be great. That having been said, if you're typical, still later in 2017, you're likely still retyping stuff into FileLogix. You're still trying to keep organized through some kind of a task manager or a notebook or something like that. You're probably still running your life through your Gmail or other email account. If you do, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's what most people are doing, but it may not be what you want to be doing. And when you see what the alternatives are, you'll go, "Oof, that was, this can be so much easier." Wouldn't it be easier if, in fact, you had a convenient place to be able to store all your loan data, addresses, values, purchase prices, down payments, rates, all that stuff, and be able to push it and pull it back from FileLogix whenever you want? Yeah, that would be cool. Wouldn't it be great if your clients had a spot from which they could upload and download their documents, and you could see it in real time, and they can see it in real time when you're approving them, so that you and your borrower and their spouse, everyone's on the same page at the same time. There's no ambiguity. Did you get my T4? Well, yes, I did. And I don't have to go looking through it through my email. I see it right on my portal at a glance. I'm always organized and always able to get things done. And further, wouldn't it be great if when the client does upload that form, that you get a to-do list automatically presented to you when you log in, as is the case in BrokerBinder and other good software, that it creates effectively a to-do list for you. So you don't have to come in on Monday morning and wonder what at the top of your email you should be looking at. On the contrary, you can go to BrokerBinder and see, with no ambiguity at all, what work needs to get done and when is it due. Because, for example, Monday morning, you'll discover that, yeah, that client's closing tomorrow and I still didn't have his T4, but yes, now I have it and I can approve it and move things forward. Wouldn't it be great if that same tool presented you with the ratios that you absolutely have to have and be able to present sensibly to your lender? Your TDS, GDS, and loan to value, all very important metrics. Wouldn't you like to know instantly when documents have been received and uploaded? And when you do have to send a reminder to a client, And I bet you've done this 3 times today if it's a normal work day for you. You've had to sit down and say, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, thank you very much for working with us. By the way, I need these documents. I asked you for 15 and I got 9, but I need these other 6. Could you please send them in to me? Well, now you got to sit down and figure out which 9 you have and which 6 you don't. Wouldn't it be great if you had a tool that automatically populated that list of 6 outstanding documents and you just click on it and maybe modify the email if you want, but have it signatured and everything else? Wouldn't that be fantastic? You'd get that email out in like literally 15 seconds as opposed to literally 15 minutes, which is probably what you did this morning. Wouldn't it be better if your clients could access everything on a mobile device and he can share it with her from home, from the cottage, from the office, wherever they happen to be, seamlessly, both spouses updating one another and also updating you? Wouldn't if you could do all those things easily and conveniently? And yeah, sure, it would be better. And that's where Broker Binder comes in. That's the value that we add. We happen not to be a CRM. We don't send out birthday announcements and things like that. We really are the tool that you use to organize and document your deal. All the fields, all the data that you collect that will eventually get into FileLogix, all the documents you need that eventually get to your lender, sharing that with your borrower, even sharing it with lawyers and auditors and other folks that are participating in the application. All of them can potentially get into Broker Binder as well. So pretty powerful piece of software, and we certainly encourage you to take a look at it for everything to do with managing your broker deals. So in conclusion, I want to remind you that your organization is very likely already able to respond to the opportunities I'm presenting here. There's nothing here that you likely are incapable of managing. If you're managing email and you can do some form of automation with a little bit of learning, a little bit of effort, and maybe a little bit of outside consultation from companies like mine, you can leverage open APIs, anticipate change, and become a learning organization and really evolve to meet the needs of your customers on an ongoing basis. No one software tool, I'd argue, is ever again going to do it. And I'd argue quite strongly that if anybody, including us, came and said, yeah, buy my product, and you're never going to have to buy another product, don't believe it. The specialization is too great. Remember again when I talked to you about email automation and opens and getting people to stand up and wave their hands? That's what's really cool now in 2017. Next year it's going to be something else. And you want to be able to be in a position where you can plug and play, like your Bluetooth, like your USB, go and grab the thing that is best going to help your business whenever you need it, whenever it's available. No one piece of software is ever again going to be able to do everything for everybody. And I'd argue really it is a good thing, and it's really going to simplify your business and make it better and easier to run. So on that note, I thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Again, my name is Joe Valenti. There's my contact information. You can reach us anytime. Our offices happen to be adjacent to the Simba offices in Woodbridge, north of Toronto. And at any time, we'd be delighted to have you reach out to us and say hello. So don't hesitate to do that. Thanks very much. Have a great day and be in touch.